You know that saying, once you see something, you can't unsee it? Once you notice avoidant attachment in your marriage, it's hard to miss. Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com. We're continuing our month-long series on attachment styles, 10 traits of avoidant attachment, and why this shuts down intimacy in your marriage. See, when you see this avoidant attachment in your relationship, you can't unsee it. So when you're reaching out for connection, maybe just a touch on the shoulder, she freezes. It's subtle, but she stiffens. You notice it. This hits you now differently once you understand attachment styles, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment. That distance that you feel. And when she used to be affectionate, she used to put her arms around you. She used to run her hands in your hair. She used to hold on to your arm in a very sweet, loving way. Having her initiate sex would be like winning the lottery. I'd settle for a hug or a touch or a compliment. And if you've listened to the last several podcasts, you understand this is all about emotional trust and emotional safety. There's something in there that has kept her from feeling emotionally safe, that has kept her from emotionally trusting you. Because remember, avoidant attachment styles, much like anxious attachment is your survival mechanism that you learned, avoidant attachment is her survival mechanism. So that quiet distance that you live with now, that affection that's gone, maybe she's always tired. She used to do these things, but what changed? Nothing has really changed in her. She has had this attachment style, this avoidant nature since long before she met you. And just like you came at this with your anxious and preoccupied attachment styles, when both of you guys are in that honeymoon phase, that infatuation phase, and dopamine's flowing and all the love chemicals in the brain and everything is wonderful, as those start to dissipate, which they do in every normal marriage, to a certain extent. So what you start to see now is this avoidant attachment style rise to the surface over time in a long-term relationship. You're wondering, okay, what happened? What changed? Now I feel completely invisible. If I try to talk to her about it, she shuts down. That's part of that avoidant attachment style. So I want to look at 10 different traits that I think really exemplify what avoidant attachment looks like. For clarification, there's a couple of different types of avoidant attachment. You have dismissive attachment or dismissive avoidant attachment. You have fearful avoidant. The dismissive one is where you really are lacking emotion. You are completely just blowing the other person off. I'm focusing more on fearful avoidant. Fearful avoidant attachment is what we tend to see in sexless marriages, marriages without connection. This is the kind of attachment that the other person desperately wants connection, but can't seem to bring themselves to foster it. I want to look mostly at the fearful avoidance side because these traits explain why she pulls away and distances herself to protect herself. And your anxious or preoccupied side does what it always does. You chase harder, you try to fix it, you try to reassure, improve, you hold on tighter. The harder you try, the more she retreats. We've talked about that in the podcast series this month. This isn't about who's right and who's wrong. It's not about shame or blame or guilt. It's about two nervous systems, yours and hers, trying to feel safe in completely opposite ways. She protects herself by withdrawing. You protect yourself by pursuing. We have to look at both sides when we're trying to rebuild a marriage. Let's unpack this avoidant attachment and what it looks like in marriage. It shows up in small behaviors. Let's look at trait number 1 here. She craves connection, but panics once she feels it. When you've been disconnected for a while and finally things start to feel good again, you're thinking, oh, okay, cool. We're starting to connect. We're starting to get back to what we used to be. Then all of a sudden, bam, it's like a switch flipped and suddenly it's gone. And she's distant again, irritable, biting tone of voice. That's not you imagining things. That's her nervous system slamming on the brakes because she's still not ready to emotionally trust you. There is still something underneath there that is keeping her from feeling emotionally safe. Avoidant attachment gets misunderstood. A lot of people believe that it's because the wife is trying to keep connection from happening. It's actually not true. The avoidant attachment wife wants connection, but doesn't feel comfortable with it. When that closeness arrives, her body remembers, ooh, this is where I'm losing control. This is when I get hurt. So she pulls back. She withdraws. She's not trying to do it to punish you. She's trying to do it to protect herself. And we talked about this a lot in that podcast the other day about the triggers. So that's why she's warm one day and then cold the next. Or maybe she initiates some touch or affection or even sex, and then she's emotionally shut down right after. You guys may have some intimate time in the bedroom, and as soon as you're finished, she jumps up and is ready to start the day, and you're wanting to just sit in this moment and relish this moment because this is a rarity for you. But she's just like, she's done with it, and you're kind of going, wow. One of the things that's also tough is when an avoidant attachment wife, she says she loves you, but her actions don't match the words, and you're confused. You're wondering, well, how does she love me, try to avoid me all at the same time? That's a trait that we see a lot with avoidant attachment partners. And it's not just the women. There's a lot of wives out there that struggle with their emotionally avoidant attachment men. There's almost a stereotype of the chasing wife and the distant husband. It doesn't seem to be as big of a deal as when you see it flip-flopped. When you see the anxious or preoccupied attachment husband craving for affection and the avoidant attachment wife pulling back away, resisting connection, that becomes tougher because society says, well, wait a minute, one of these is almost like expected and normal, quote unquote normal, in a marriage. The chasing wife, the distant husband, is almost more acceptable than the opposite. This is where you have to resist the urge to chase, because that's the anxious trap. You're trying to close the gap. When she pulls away, you chase. Instead, just become aware of it. The secure husband process always starts with awareness. Just become aware. Just notice. Notice and tell yourself, she's not rejecting me. She's regulating herself because something still does not feel emotionally safe with her. There's still not emotional trust. And again, that's where you put in the work inside to help soothe your nervous system. Don't react. Be able to respond calmly. Be able to not act in the behaviors that you have in the past that harm emotional safety and trust. She's looking for space. And so we take it personally. So you give her that space that she needs without taking it as rejection, and you become more consistent and steady. That helps break the cycle. So she doesn't have to put that guard up and panic as much. And so over time, she allows herself to not panic when connection happens because she starts to feel more safe. I've done a lot over the last few podcasts on emotional safety and trust. This is right here at the core of that. So number 2, she equates independence with safety. Avoidant partners often grew up in homes where love was inconsistent or conditional, loss of control. So much like we as anxious and preoccupied men grew up with our own survival strategies, avoidant women grow up with the survival strategy of, I have to build safety by being self-sufficient. And you see this whenever she says things like, I don't need help. I've got this. I don't need your help with this. You see it in independent ways, like you guys have your own separate bank accounts, checking accounts. Especially if she has her own career, you have your own career. Very, very independent. An extension of that survival strategy. If she handles everything herself, she won't be let down. Because in the past, she was let down. That's how she became self-sufficient. She handles her own bills because she just wants to take care of it herself. And some of it may be trust. Again, she may not trust you to take care of things. And that's something that you kind of have to work out. If there's areas in your marriage where you have to step up, not because you're trying to earn love, but just because you have a role to play as the man in the family to be able to handle certain responsibilities. If she is not trusting of that, she will decline your help because she's like, I can do this better. I can do this myself. And if you try to surprise her with something nice and she seems irritated instead of grateful, she's probably seeing that it's a giving to get situation. But even if you're really, really trying hard not to do this, it's always seen through this lens of what is he trying to pull? And so if you're trying to do things to make things easier for her, but in many ways you're just trying to people please, that's not going to work very well. And it's not that she doesn't appreciate you. She just doesn't trust dependency on you. You want to lead in your household. So it's not that you want to stop trying to prove that she can depend on you, but be a dependable man. Do you see the difference in this? You want to be a dependable man because that is the role you play in your family. As a parent, as a husband, you want to be dependable and reliable in your job. You want to be dependable in all these other areas of life. Be dependable because that's the kind of man you want to be. And from there, stay calm, grounded, consistent. That's that awareness piece, because once you're aware, then you choose to see her independence as just protection, self-protection and not rejection. And then what you can do is you can change your way of thinking. So instead of resentment, you can respect her, respect that independence, respect that drive that she has. The safest love that you can provide is a respectful, patient love. When she can respect you, well, then that's where she will again start to feel more comfortable reaching in a little bit closer. But she's in self-protection mode. Trait number 3, she shuts down during conflict. Talked about this a lot over the last few podcasts. This one drives men crazy. Every time that there's tension, you as the anxious avoidant man want to talk it out. You want to fix it. You want to make it right. We hear stories all the time about the wives that are constantly nagging their husbands, wanting to talk about it, wanting to fix it. Now it's on the flip side. And every time there's tension and you're wanting to fix it and talk it out and make it right, she goes silent. Just flat tone, walks away, shuts down. And you keep going. You keep following her around. You keep trying to talk about this because you're thinking she doesn't care about my feelings. She is now overwhelmed. Remember the triggers I talked about in these last couple podcasts. When her emotions start getting high, avoidant women, they go into system overload and just shut down. They do this, again, out of self-protection. And you're standing there begging for a fix or a conversation to solve a problem. And the more that you're pressing the issue, the more she retreats, the more you feel abandoned. You have to understand at this point that you are not going to get resolution at this moment. So stop chasing. Give both of you a break. If she shuts down, she walks away, self-soothe. Just remind yourself she's flooded right now. We will come back to this issue later. Let her calm down. More than likely, you're probably worked up inside as well. Let her calm down. You calm down. Later on, you guys can probably come back together when you're in a better place. But at this point, you really have to understand she's triggered and immediately goes into shutdown mode. And you're going to be triggered. And because remember that inner child, how he got triggered, that old fear of being ignored or dismissed. So what you do is in those moments, you learn how to comfort that little boy inside of you before you go chasing after her. And that's where you give her some space. You go off and quietly just be like, all right, little guy, breathe. We're safe. We're not being abandoned. She's just overwhelmed at the moment. And you stay calm. That calm response begins to teach her what safety feels like. Your inner boy doesn't understand what safety feels like. All of this is to, again, create that sense of emotional safety in the relationship. Trait 4, intimacy. It's on her terms. Sex becomes complicated when one partner's nervous system associates vulnerability with danger. Because remember, for her, intimacy is the doorway to vulnerability, exposure. She controls that doorway. She controls when, how, if it happens out of self-protection. If she's initiating intimacy, it's probably only when she feels completely safe. It's going to be on her timing. When you initiate, depending on how comfortable she feels, she may tense up, she may go quiet, she may go along with it, but she may be disconnected. She may just say, I'm tired, I'm not in the mood, and then that becomes even more confusing and frustrating. But the truth is, sex for the avoidant partner feels like surrender. It feels like giving something up. We go back to emotional safety and emotional trust. Surrender to her was never safe before, and this goes way back before you guys ever met, probably when she was a little kid. But for you, man, now you're questioning your worth, your manhood, your attractiveness, your desirability. Her avoidance isn't a reflection of your desirability or your attraction or your worth or your manhood or anything. It's a mirror of her fear. That's why I always say you have to stop making her participation in intimacy your validation. You don't create intimacy by demanding it. My favorite line is, you cannot negotiate desire. You create it by being a desirable man, by being emotionally safe first. Have that self-love, again, where you can overflow that. You can touch your wife non-sexually without any kind of agenda. Be affectionate without needing that sexual payoff. And that calm, grounded presence communicates safety more than anything that you would ever say in a conversation trying to fix things, chasing her around the house. It's this idea of loving yourself so much that you have love to give overflow. That's that confidence. That's why that spiritual guidance is so important in the secure husband process. When you can ask your higher power, God, anchor my confidence. I don't want to have my worth tied to her reaction. What is my worth? Dialogue, prayer, introspection, meditation. You get that feedback that says, yeah, your worth has nothing to do with her affection or initiations. And when your peace comes from something deeper than her affection, she stops feeling like she has to guard herself from your need. You stop feeling like you have to get that need met from her to feel worthy. And over time, that's going to help you become more grounded and calm, and that calm presence becomes that invitation back into closeness. Trait 5, she deflects emotion to stay in control. This goes back to the whole chasing her around the house. You're opening up. You're telling her, I missed you today. Or maybe you're being just honest. Babe, it hurt when you pulled away last night. And then she just shrugs it off. You feel dismissed. But again, what's really happening isn't that she's trying to be mean or cruel to you. It's fear. Emotion makes her feel powerless. So she minimizes yours to keep herself safe. When you share something vulnerable and she says you're too sensitive, you try to connect. She disconnects, she pulls away. It's easier for her to stay surface level than to risk being overwhelmed emotionally. That's that self-protection mode. What do? Well, being authentic, truthful, vulnerable, that's what you need to continue to do, because that becomes a man that she can connect to. But you drop the need for reciprocity. You begin telling the truth because it's your truth, not because you need a response. And that's what we're trying to do, if we're being honest. We are trying to get that validation. We are trying to get her to come back and say, oh yes, I love you too. I am attracted to you too. We want that. Now, disclaimer here. Don't get me wrong. If you never ever get that in a relationship, I am not saying you stay in that relationship. But if you do the inner work and become a more secure husband, that's going to help your wife with that emotional trust and emotional safety. And she will become freer to move toward you. That is what happens in most of the cases that I have seen, including my own. But it is not always. And if you get to a point where you've been doing this inner work for years, you feel secure, you feel grounded, you feel loved, and you just can't break through that guard. As I always say, that means you've got some tough questions to answer. I just want to preface that because you don't have to tolerate that forever. That's all a part of emotional leadership. Emotional leadership is you cleaning up your side of the street, you're helping her, but it may not last forever. I just want to throw that in there. But every time that you speak from truth, when you're honest, authentic, and you're doing it instead of need, you model what emotional safety looks like. You model that leadership. And that's the first bridge to intimacy. That's how we repair, and she can finally bring down that guard. Trait 6, she stays busy to avoid feeling anything. If you live within an avoidant partner, you have seen this behavior. She never stops moving. There's always something to do, somewhere to go, something that needs organizing. Hey, the kids are gone from the house. We have 3 hours completely by ourselves with no children around. Look at this perfect opportunity for intimacy, for affection. And she grabs her grocery list and she's off to the store. She's efficient, dependable, rarely sits still long enough to breathe, actually. But when you do try to slow her down, suggest that y'all have some time together? No, I can't. There's too much to do. Now, it looks like responsibility. She's got a lot of responsibility. It's actually avoidance. Because what's happening underneath is if she's still and is not in motion, then that means there's opportunities there for affection and connection and intimacy that she is not comfortable with. And she is trying to avoid those feelings. So she stays moving. She's on the go. She's planning. She's running the errands. She's thinking. She does not want your anxiety to catch up with her. You know, you're thinking date night, and next thing you know, she's doing laundry. You want to be close, but she's just going task to task. And it's not that she doesn't want connection. It's just that connection doesn't feel good to her right now. And if she stops, she has to deal with it. So that means feeling. She doesn't want to feel. She's in self-protection mode. She just keeps going. What do? Well, you don't criticize her for staying busy, because that never works, because she'll just stare right at you and say things like, well, the groceries aren't going to buy themselves. The laundry is not going to fold itself. Maybe you do some of these things with her. Run some of these errands with her. Maybe pour her a glass of wine while she's doing something. Mesh in with her world without being needy. Come into that world with calm, grounded confidence, not pressure. Be aware that busyness, that's her armor. That's her protection mode. And you choose not to take it personally, because you do take it personally. When you get 3 hours with no kids in the middle of a Saturday and you're thinking, we haven't had sex in months, there's nobody here, we are distraction free, and she's off onto the tasks, that can feel rejecting. Don't take it personally. Be patient. I'm not saying wait forever, but be patient. If you can stay grounded, that's where you can start to make some progress here. Trait 7, we talk about reassurance seeking several times over the last podcast. She pulls away when you seek reassurance. This is that collision, the anxious and the avoidant. You crave closeness to feel secure. She craves distance to feel safe. When you ask, are we okay? She's just hearing, I need you to make my anxiety stop. So if you're doing all the chasing and the texting and the questions and she feels pressured, she feels cornered, what feels like you're trying to get connection to her feels like you're trying to get control. You sense the disconnection, you lean in, she pulls away, you know the game. She goes silent. Every step you take toward her feels like a step that she has to retreat and back up. And like we talked about before, it drives you crazy. You start thinking, well, if she loved me, she'd want to have this conversation, or she would want to this or that. She's not avoiding you. She's avoiding the emotions that closeness stirs inside of her, because for some reason she is triggered. So you have to hold your ground without chasing. And if she asks for space, you'll give it. Stay emotionally open. Don't take it personally. Don't get rejected. Let her feel that your love isn't contingent on constant reassurance and contact. Now, again, that doesn't mean you go forever with no affection or contact or touch, but you give it some space and room for it to return. That's hard. That's why it's so important to do that inner child work, where you're soothing your nervous system and you're talking to that little part of you inside that equates distance with danger. You teach your nervous system how to calm down and be grounded. Trait 8, she seems calm, but it's a mask for anxiety. This is so tough. From the outside, she looks calm, collected. My wife was not a yeller. She did not yell. She did not scream. She hardly raises her voice any. She handles stress. I think she handles stress gracefully. And in fact, there's times where I'm actually in awe. I'm like how she handles situations. But when it comes to our relationship, when it comes to her feelings for us, we may see that on the outside, but that calm doesn't necessarily mean that she's feeling emotionally safe or trusting and peaceful toward us. It's a control mechanism. She's soothing her nervous system, really, at this point. That's how she's keeping her emotions from just dumping out. That stillness. And it's not that it's an absence of emotion. She's just suppressing it. She is trying not to react. And if you, as the anxious or preoccupied attachment, have a history of reacting with behaviors where you're either sulking, withdrawing, raging, leaving the house, passive aggressive, all these manipulative types of ways, what she's going to do is when she sees you verbally vomiting and stuff, she is going to suppress. You'll see this if you try to have that conversation about something that's heavy in your relationship, whether it's sex or money or your fear that you guys are drifting apart, and she is quiet and or changes the subject, and you feel dismissed, you feel, I don't want to say mocked. That's not the word I'm looking for. But her composure gives you this idea that she doesn't care. It's not indifference, it's that emotional self-protection that she has. Because feeling deeply, remember, is dangerous for her. She doesn't yet trust that she can deal with it. Don't confuse this composure with coldness. Don't take it personally. Don't feel rejected. If she shuts down emotionally, you don't react. You stay grounded. You breathe. You soothe your nervous system. And you model calm connection. Remember your capacity to feel and remain steady. That's leadership. You're showing her what healthy peace looks like. And you're not demanding that she do it the way that you're doing it. Trait 9, she withdraws when shame gets triggered. It's subtle. She feels that she's disappointing you or that she's failed in some way. She's going to retreat. This is most often seen after some sort of disagreement or you've expressed some sort of hurt or discouragement or frustration. And what happens is she goes quiet. I mean, she can't even look at you in the eye. She starts scrolling on the phone. She starts doing more and more of those tasks, as busy tasks, staying busy. It's hard for us to read that. And we might read it as angry or hurt, but a lot of times she's dealing with shame because you say, you know what? It felt hurt when you rejected me for sex. And she shuts down. You're following her. You're trying to fix it. You're chasing her around the house. She's now behind that invisible wall. She's got her guards up. Remember, her body learned long ago that being wrong equals being unsafe. That's why she disappears emotionally before that feeling can swallow her up. It's shame inside. And I know for men, it's hard to understand, well, she's controlling the affection, she's controlling the sex, she's controlling, what is there to be shameful about? Well, it's something that happened way before you guys, again, ever met. She has her childhood wounds, just like we deal with our inner child wounds. In those moments, you stop chasing resolution right away in a conversation, and you give her that space. When you see what's happening, just, hey, you know what? We can talk later about this. Babe, I love you. I know we'll figure it out. That right there, like just being able to say something like that is like emotional oxygen to her because she can breathe. You are saying, hey, you know what? This is important to me, but I'm not going to smother you with it. That's an example of a loving action. I talk about taking loving action, loving towards you, not self-abandoning, but also loving towards her. Loving action, it means choosing compassion, self-compassion and compassion for your partner over control. Let her see that the mistakes that she makes doesn't mean you're withdrawing your love from her. Again, that's that idea of unconditional love. You love yourself and you love your partner. She doesn't have to be perfect. But also loving yourself means you don't self-abandon. This starts to dissolve that shame. Shame is at the core of anxious, preoccupied attachment. It's at the core of the avoidant attachment. Dissolve that shame inside that we struggle with. Because trait 10, she's protecting herself from love. That's the hard part of all of this. She wants to love. She desperately wants to love. Yet love is risky. The avoidant attachment wife, when she finally experiences consistent love, she's having to power through these inner alarms that are just screaming, this is when I'm going to get hurt. This is where he'll see that I'm unworthy. Because we think that this is coming from confidence, that we're the ones who are lacking in self-esteem and lacking in self-confidence. Our wives are strong and forceful and all of this. No, they are struggling. This is a self-esteem, self-confidence issue that they struggle with. So they pull back out of fear. She distances herself to soften that emotional blow. So that's where you just don't chase out of fear. You don't chase her fear. You don't chase from your fear. You stand strong. You're the anchor. You're the mountain. You're not a rescuer. You just show her through your calm, grounded steadiness that love doesn't mean that you are shameful and that you're losing yourself. That gives you this ability to act from loving, grounded presence. And after each loving act, you can look back and say, did I lead in that moment with peace or did I lead from pressure? Did I respond from love or from shame and fear? Did I stay grounded or did I hand my worth over to her and her reaction? That reflection allows you to take what used to be frustration and turn it into growth. And that's the beginning of breaking that anxious avoidant loop. It's breaking the cycle. Because you're not going to heal her attachment. You don't heal an avoidant partner, okay? But what you can do is you heal yourself and what it triggers in you. Because when you live with an avoidant partner, it can feel like rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. The silence, the turning away, the emotional unavailability, the lack of affection, the lack of touch. Yeah, you feel lonely, you feel invisible. But just approach this from a different mindset. She's not your enemy. She's just afraid. She's afraid of needing. She's afraid of losing control. She's afraid of being known. Maybe for the first time, you now see that her fear keeps triggering yours, your fear of abandonment, your fear of not being enough, your fear that love is conditional. And then as you heal yourself, notice I didn't say trying to fix her, but in becoming a safe place that her fear can come to, now you start to see something powerful happening, that this is not about changing her, it's about leading yourself. And that gives her the opportunity to feel safer, to trust more. And she has the opportunity to make those changes inside herself. It's about leading yourself. It's that awareness that's recognizing these patterns without shaming or blaming or guilting. And you choose to respond intentionally instead of reacting instinctively. And you work with that inner child. You comfort that part of you that still equates distance with danger. And anchor your identity in something unshakable, spiritual guidance, God, truth, purpose. Dialogue with that higher power of what your next loving action is. And show up with gentleness and strength and not pressure and urgency and fear. And then reflect on it. Did I stay secure? Did I love her in a safe way? And inviting her to love you from a secure place. That's how you become the man that you want to be, the man whose peace isn't dictated by someone else's fear. This takes time. Healing this dynamic takes time, and it begins with you doing the inner work. You can't change her. Her nervous system didn't learn avoidance overnight, and yours didn't learn anxiety overnight either. But every moment that you stay calm when you used to chase, every time that you respond with love instead of fear and panic, you rewire both of you just a little bit more. And then that allows you guys to start embodying the truth that, hey, I can love without losing myself. Both of you start to feel that both of you can stay present when it's hard without chasing or withdrawing. I can give space without withdrawing. I can be safe, even if she's scared. That's the essence of masculine emotional leadership. That kind of emotional intelligence creates peace, even when she's fearful. That's being a secure husband. It's not trying to force her healing, but modeling what healing looks like. Safety, when it's real, it doesn't demand. It invites. And when you become safety, when your peace no longer depends on her response, that's when love finally has room to breathe again. So I know being married to an avoidant partner, it's challenging. It is confusing. If you see yourself in some of these stories, if you see your wife in some of these traits, and you see your reactions, the chasing, the confusion, just take a big deep breath. You're not broken. Your wife's avoidant patterns aren't proof that you're unlovable or unattractive or undesirable. But all this is an invitation for you to heal the parts of you that need healing so that you can keep showing up grounded. You keep choosing calm over chaos, truth over fear, love over panic. And that may mean setting boundaries. It may mean not tolerating the intolerable. It also may very well be the invitation that your wife can feel. And so both of you can start to come back together again. And you both learn what secure love really feels like. That's how marriages begin to heal. I hope this attachment series podcast that we're doing all month long is helpful for you. Hopefully you're enjoying learning about these attachment styles. If you're not a subscriber to this podcast, I encourage you to subscribe. That way you never miss an episode. We may do another one of these month-long themes again here soon. And share this podcast with someone. If you've got a friend that you think might need to hear this, give me a review if this podcast was helpful for you. And if you need help, that accountability factor, reach out. SecureHusband.com. Just fill out that form for a free 30-minute consultation. It's just a conversation to see if one-on-one coaching might be a good fit for you to help you get unstuck. And I'll see you again on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.